Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lammermont Weber, and today we have the extraordinary privilege to be with a mother, Dolores Temple, and her friend, also a mother. Uh, and today, March 3rd, 2015, coincidentally, synchronistically, I would say, happens to be the second anniversary of the events of March 3rd, 2013, that took place at St. Charles, Missouri, just a few miles from the area of the Ferguson riots and in the same jurisdiction as the police there that were prepared to carry out the false flags that they did. And this concerns the unlawful detention of Dolores Temple's son, Stephen, uh, in prison, incarcerated there, uh, and tortured for merely asking the officer who brought him in, "Are you sworn to defend the Constitution?" And because he asked that, he was manhandled on arrest, and he has been over 900 days in jail. He has been tortured in jail, and even though at the beginning of this process, Dolores Temple and these group of parents, uh, uh, there were other children in the automobile that was headed from Jacksonville, Florida, to another state at which they were going to be given jobs. These are polite young men who were trying to make some money for good causes.
Ready to begin their new lives.
Yeah, and they were pulled over. So uh, the purpose of this um, program is multifold. One is at the human level, to bring the plight of Stephen Temple, who is in prison in the United States now, held for over 900 days,
Yes.
And unjustifiably, as far as I can see, who was picked up and uh, on a twisted version of the RICO Act, simply because he said, "Are you sworn?" His car was stopped on the highway. There were a bunch of young men in there who were headed across the country toward what state?
Kansas.
Kansas, to get jobs that Dolores Temple had arranged from them, and they included your friend's son.
Yes.
And so now we're going to get down into the facts, but we're also doing this to see if there are any attorneys who would step forward, because no attorneys, and I'm talking about members of the bar, have chosen to come in here and face the police state situation that we have in Ferguson, Missouri, that has kept this young man, this honest young man, who did nothing but politely inquire whether the police officer was sworn to uphold the Constitution. And because of that, he's been held in jail since March 3rd, 2013. So, Dolores and your friend, you since you were on the phone with Stephen at the time that this happened, you just happened to be giving them, navigating their cars that went from Jacksonville to Kansas. I mean,
Right.
kids travel. I can remember traveling for summer jobs. You travel all over the country to go from one place. And I was an apprentice ironworker in Florida, in Belgrade, Florida, one summer helping to build a mill there. And that's how I earned enough tuition to buy my first car.
Wow.
So, we all have jobs. So
Yes.
I understand that. But when I was doing that, we didn't have a police state as overtly as now, and I wasn't stopped, and these issues. So could you please bring us into the whole story? How did this journey start in Jacksonville? Who was involved? Who was in the car? When did they take off? What was their destination? Bring us into the full picture, please.
Okay. May I call you Alfred or?
Yeah, please.
Alfred, yes. It was March 3rd, 2013. One of my children and two of Dolores's children were in the car, and they were in St. Charles County, Missouri, which is just a couple of miles from Ferguson, as you said. And later on, we came to know that they were profiled. They pull over out-of-state tags on a regular basis, and start harassing, especially young men, and trump up charges to get, really to extort money or whatever they can from the car, the vehicle, the kids, what have you. And every time we've gone back to visit Stephen, they've got a young man or several young men in a car pulled over on the side of the road with the same exact situation going on. They pulled him over. I was on the phone and I heard something going on. I just happened to be talking to Stephen at that particular time, and he said, something's happening. And I said, well, what's happening? Because I'm giving them directions, and I'm hearing rustling and tussling and doors opening and closing, and I'm hearing all these different voices. And he said, something's happening. And then and I said, well, I was trying to ascertain if it was vandalism or, some sort of rioting, or if it was police. At the time, I didn't know. And I hear Stephen loudly say, so he said it without the window rolled down. So he said it loud enough so that they could hear, and so that I could hear. He was asking, may I see some identification? And I heard them say no. And then he said, are you sworn to uphold the Constitution? He said these questions over and over again. And each time the questions were asked, and then when they told him to get out of the car and it escalated, he had said, no, thank you. And then he said, I don't know if you can hear me, but I said, no, thank you. And that was translated into, the officer said under oath, he said that Stephen said a four-letter word to the police officer, which he did not say. And of course, all of these charges were trumped up. Stephen is a completely innocent young man. He was pulled from the car, and I heard the other boys screaming, no, don't do that to him. And I thought they were going to kill him because of the way that the other boys were screaming. And I thought, oh my gosh. And then, I heard Stephen screaming, and then the phone goes dead, and I panicked. I started calling police stations. As it ended up, I called that particular police station, which was in St. Charles, and it was less than a mile away from where they pulled them over. And I kept asking them, and I kept calling them, and I, have you heard of, and I described the car with 3 young men in the car. No, ma'am, we haven't had anything like that all day. And I kept trying to wait. And then I said, well, I finally called back and I said, I need to file a missing persons report then. Something terrible has happened and I don't know what to do. I need to talk to somebody. They said, ma'am, you need to call the police in your own state because that's where they're from. So I did that, called the police, and then wound up with the FBI in my home for the better part of that afternoon. And they helped me locate the car. Luckily, one of the boys had the cell phone on. And the FBI officer said that I can't guarantee you that the phone is with the boy. And we all thought the worst. I thought, I was going to go look for bodies, honestly, is what I thought because of what I heard on the phone. And so we located the whereabouts of the cell phone, and I called the police station back and I said, I have coordinates for you. Can you please go check this address? And I gave them the address, and they got a little frustrated with me and hung up the phone on me and said, I told you, don't call here again, something to that effect. And that really lit me up. So, of course, I throw my purse in the car and I start heading for Missouri, thinking I'm going to be looking on the side of the road. When I get closer to those coordinates, and I wind up at the police station, and I show up in a panic, of course, and they're laughing at me. I walk in there and they're all laughing at me.
And
they think it's
this is at the St. Charles,
yes,
Missouri police station,
yes,
whose officers had on March 3rd, 2013, they were the ones that had stopped the car.
They stopped the car, right, and impounded the car and thrown the boys in jail. They didn't get a phone call, as it turned out. We all always thought you at least got a phone call. They didn't get phone calls. They didn't get anything but hit with the taser and manhandled, and Stephen was beat up really bad because he, of course, knows the Constitution inside and out. He's a smart young man. He's a truthful young man. Mm-hmm. And he was very polite, to where he should not have been handled the way that he was handled. And that was what was so irksome to me, because I know the boy. I've known him since he was a very little child. He's a very good boy. And so I asked to speak to the police chief, and he brings me back to his office, and he just sits back in his chair, and he thinks this is all entertainment for him. Yes, so he's jeering and laughing at me like, I'm the best laugh he's had all week. And I said, sir, I've raised my son to be respectful of the law and police officers. And the way that this situation was handled was despicable. And I don't believe, I cannot believe that I have raised my children to respect the law and have them treat. This was their first encounter with the law ever. Mm-hmm. All of the boys, they have never been ever ticketed, ever stopped for anything, or ever talked to the police. Well, I know mine hasn't. I mean, I can't speak entirely for Stephen, but I know for my son, it was the very first time he had ever been encountered police. So they fingerprinted the boys, and Stephen actually wanted to charge the police station for his fingerprints. Mm-hmm. He said, my fingerprints are mine, and I am not giving them to you unless you agree to pay me for them. Mm-hmm. So they thought it was funny, of course, and they said, yeah, we'll pay you for them. And he said,
a signed contract.
And we have the contract here. Mm-hmm. Stephen decided his fingerprints that day were going to be worth $10 million, and they signed it. And so we have that for your viewers we can post on your website there. Mm-hmm. And so,
do you want to go back to what Susan Schneider said and jeered at you?
So, well, that was in the
courtroom.
In fact, in the courtroom.
Later in the courtroom.
Later on in the courtroom, when the very last time we saw Stephen in the courtroom, I asked to be put on the stand and talking about that police chief conversation. The prosecution asked me, so the chief of police came all the way from his office to come down and laugh and jeer at you. And I said, no, ma'am. He invited me back to his office to laugh and jeer at me. And she looked at the judge, and at that point, my entire testimony was stricken from the record. So it was as if I wasn't even there. And my testimony was crucial to Stephen's case because the 12 jurors that supposedly convicted Stephen of guilt, which we are questioning because they weren't present when the sentencing was read. They kept reiterating that Stephen screamed F you. They said it over and over and over, and they said it increasingly hostile and or with a lot of hostility.
We've kind of.
I didn't mean to jump that far forward.
No, wait. We sort of accelerated through a bunch of stuff. You were inside the police chief's office, and then all of a sudden.
Right.
Wait. Let me finish my sentence even.
Sorry.
All of a sudden, we went through a trial. What were the charges? Why is it that only Stephen was charged? What happened to your sons? Walk us through everything.
Well, my son was charged with
Okay, so we got cut off when I asked what were the charges. What were each of the boys charged with? What were Delara's two children charged with? And what were your son charged with? And we know that the car was stopped because it appears that there's a police conspiracy to profile and target young men in a car in that area, correct?
And out of state plates.
Out of state plates, okay.
Yes. So my son, driving the car, was charged with driving 75 in a posted 65. Well, in that particular area, it jumps down to 65 right on that bend of the road because it's going past a police station.
I see.
It jumps down to 65, then it goes right back to 75, just for a 1 mile stretch of road right there.
Okay.
What had happened was somebody pulled out in front of him, and right when he passed the road that the police station was on, there were police cars sitting there at that intersection, and he hits the brakes, and of course, they give him a following too close and a speeding ticket for my son. And when they pull him over. So then they pull all the boys out of the car, and they wanted to know what all the stuff was in the car. It was all of their belongings. All of their worldly belongings were in the car. And it was basically, just some clothes and a television, and it was just as much as they could, get into the car, and the three of them. So
and these are these are homeschooled young boys that you as mothers have homeschooled together, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And they have they ever been in trouble with the law before?
My child has never been in trouble with the law. I kept a close eye on my children 24 hours a day. I was very diligent with my children.
I guess mine got a little bit away. Stephen did have a little issue in Florida. He did have an issue in Florida.
Okay.
Well,
what kind of issue, could I ask?
The situation with Stephen was he was told by his father that he could literally get him out of any trouble. So there was trouble with a roommate. Stephen had already moved out, and he was on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a situation that happened with a roommate, and policemen came over to knock on the door, ask him questions, and then they asked if they could come in and look around, which Stephen said, of course, come in. He didn't have any problem. One of the boys had, I think it was a gun, and Stephen took.
They wanted to know about it, and Stephen went to the police just to explain the whole situation, because it really wasn't a problem. There was really no issue.
Yeah.
But the police there then just turned it into a story that was unbelievable. But we settled that at this point on March 3rd. That was all settled as far as we can
Okay.
do.
Right. Well,
That was done.
how that ended up, we were there at the court when it happened. We watched. We were right there when it all happened. The judge dismissed. He said, "Son, get out of my courtroom." He said, "I don't ever want to see you back in my courtroom again."
So that was done.
That was the end of it.
Okay, good.
And Judge
Okay.
Moore.
So now we're back here.
Okay, so let's go back to St. Charles, Missouri, just a few miles from Ferguson, where the police have a trap, and the police chief laughs in the face of the mothers of young boys that they stop, and then strikes the testimony of the mothers in the court. It sounds like a lawless police state that the United States corporation
Exactly.
is.
Very much so.
Yeah. So what were the other two boys charged with then? They were just passengers.
Well, Daniel didn't get charged with anything. Daniel wasn't charged with anything, and he was the first to be let out. They just let him out.
Who was? Who, sorry?
Daniel, his brother.
I
Stephen's
see.
brother, Daniel, was let out, not charged with anything.
Your
And
other
then-
son.
And then what was Stephen charged with?
Well, they didn't have any charges for the boys until they found, and it was actually a warrant that hadn't been taken down
From Florida.
From Florida.
Situation.
and they it wasn't it was not active. There were no known warrants at the time, and he just wanted to make. Stephen even double checked. We went down, we double checked, and made sure that everything was clear, so there wouldn't be any trouble with the job. Because they always ask, of course. So everything was clean, and they got the green light to go and have a good life.
Evidently, when they took his fingerprint, there was some kind of warrant that we did not know about.
They said that. Well, I don't even believe there was a warrant, but they said I think they said there was a warrant out for his arrest, and Stephen had claimed that it had been taken care of. Judge Morrow would testify to that, and we got the transcripts, and we wanted to make sure that was all clear, so that Missouri wouldn't be a problem. So. The other two boys are let go. My child has a speeding ticket and a following too close because he hit his brakes when the man came onto the highway from the on-ramp there. And so he told me to go home and, have a nice day and, what have you. And right. I after I told him how despicable I thought their team of police handled the situation, I said, don't you think it was a little excessive? I said, these kids are brought up to respect the law, and the way that they were treated was absolutely deplorable. Right. And he told me not to tell him how to run his office.
Oh, okay. But now let's get back to the matter of Stephen. What was Stephen charged with? You mentioned something about RICO.
So, Stephen winds up being. They wind up throwing 3 felony charges at him.
Possession. What else?
There was a felony fleeing. When I inquired about that, because when we saw it come up on CaseNet. The officer, when I asked him what the felony fleeing was, I know he didn't start to run.
No, he said he was in his car.
He said, all I heard him say was no thank you. And he said that is considered felony fleeing because he said no thank you.
So that he was charged with felony fleeing because they say that he had an arrest warrant in Florida. So he wouldn't get out of the car. Now, has that arrest warrant been checked out or what?
It has been, and Judge Morrow has since passed away, and we are going back and getting the transcripts and the audio for that, and we're writing our sworn statements. To make sure that Florida isn't a problem and they're not basing anything from Florida, because that was handled and
settled
over with. And that should not have been a problem for Missouri to take something like that and throw it at him and then add these trumped up charges to Stephen and basically ruin his life.
Now, what are the other 2 charges? I want to get the specifics down.
Okay, the felony fleeing is the one that I'm certain of,
and 2 possessions of marijuana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are those correct?
Are those correct? I do not.
Well, it seems like it was. It was some sort of orchestrated,
choreographed situation from top to bottom, and we believe that was part of the choreograph. By the end of the whole year, we find that, and it was not a felony charge for a couple weeks or so.
There was
nothing on there.
No, I think it was at least a month before we even
noticed it was on the docket.
Before we even knew what he was being held on. They wouldn't.
But I mean, did they find marijuana on him And,
No.
and
No,
that,
no.
They
but
didn't
then
find it.
why, how did these two charges get on there? So those are fraudulent charges, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Correct.
I see. So
Correct.
he is in prison, number
Falsely.
one, based on two fraudulent charges of possession of marijuana, because these are young kids just charged with, weed. And then there's a question as to felony fleeing, because he said, "Are you sworn to uphold the Constitution?" And when the police didn't answer,
And they told him to get out of the car. He said,
said,
no, thank you.
yeah. So okay. So they obviously targeted him as a potential troublemaker and have tried to throw.
Basically,
Yeah.
yes.
Now, what accounts for him being in jail then since 2013? That's 2 years.
I know, and the whole hearing wasn't until 541 days since they had him. He had no he did not sign any waiver of his speedy trial, none whatsoever.
He still hasn't signed anything to this day.
Yeah. Now, this of course doesn't apply. Now, what the judge said was this. Says the court finds that the defendant has by his actions waived his right to counsel and chooses to represent himself. The court rescinds the appointment of the public defender. Now, when we discussed that earlier, you said that was because you found that the public defender would only represent him if he would plead guilty to the possession of marijuana charges and to the felony fleeing. So they were acting as an arm of the prosecution.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So this seems to be an institutionalized railroading. That's what American justice
Exactly.
has come to.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a country that has lost its bearing. I mean, I say this
Alfred,
as an exiled American, that it's a country that has lost its bearing.
absolutely.
Yes.
And if I may add, since then we've done an unbelievable amount of research, and we found that last year that over 60,000 motorists have gone through this same scenario across the United States. And we came across two poker players who had their winnings in their car, and they had their car impounded. They were thrown in jail, and
Just like Stephen, out of state.
had their money taken. They said it was drug money, and but of course they got a great attorney, and it was very close to Missouri where Stephen and the other boys were pulled over. It was just in the next state of Iowa, and they were able to get a little more for information as to why this is happening across the United States, where motorists are being railroaded. And these were two young men. Well, I wouldn't say young men, but they weren't old men.
Now, how old is Stephen now today?
24. He's 24.
Yeah.
24 years old.
Now, why is it that with this flagrant violations, you haven't been able to get an attorney? Did you go to the ACLU or did you go to?
Yes,
We went to the ACLU.
We did.
We went to the Attorney General's office. They gave us the runaround and the phone numbers and go to here and go to here. And I'm sorry, ma'am, there's nothing we can do for you.
We spent
We did.
one entire year. It was a full-time job for us to make phone calls and look at case law and find names and numbers and it's been a long road. We've had a very difficult go at trying to free.
But let's say coming at it innocently, doesn't the Bar Association have a list of names and referrals for people? You know, like attorneys work for money. I mean, it's
Right.
the so that
I would think that
that's.
something
I mean,
would
this
well,
seems like a case. You know,
it does, because there's more to this. There's a lot more to this that I would think any attorney would love. I agree.
Yeah. So that it would seem that the only explanation is that the attorneys are part of the scheme, right?
That's the only thing that we could figure.
And I could go back and count how many attorneys I tried to attract. Even with his contract, I have tried to attract several attorneys. And
so that here you have a contract where you have clear police misconduct of signing a contract that a suspect's I'm just a person detained. Fingerprints are worth $10 million. I mean, that is a violation of police procedure that in any jurisdiction, a proper one would qualify for suspension or some kind of official reprimand, correct?
Yes, correct.
And so that the only way that you would not have attorneys is that if the attorneys in this jurisdiction have been told, if you represent any of these young men that we're busting and that we're robbing, you're going to find yourself out of work completely, because this is a racket.
Basically,
it's them that have to be prosecuted through RICO. It's the judges, it's the police, and it's the lawyers that have to be prosecuted through racketeering. Shame on the United States. Shame on Ferguson. Ferguson.
Shame.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And shame on Benjamin Netanyahu today on March 3rd in the Congress, because you know who's responsible for this? Among other things, Israel, believe it or not, for undermining the United States. Well, we won't get into that. Goodness. But anyway,
yes.
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That was goodness.
I just had to say this.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where do we go from here? I mean, it's clear that your son just needs legal representation.
Exactly.
And I know that any lawyer in any jurisdiction of the United States, any of the 50 states, can come in and can be, admitted, because he or she, if they're a member of some other bar, can come in,
they piggyback
for appearance. And this is a case that is crying out.
May I show his picture at this time, because he is crying out for help.
Yeah,
and you can see him crying out for help. You see his hand out there?
No.
This was before. This was the day that they had, or a week. This was, I put the date. This is March 3rd, 2014. 13.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this one is a year later. Wow. A year and a half.
He looks like he's aged 20 years.
Oh, my God.
They did to him. Look at that.
Now,
he's begging. See him begging? He's begging for help.
Now, so that he lost over 100 pounds?
It was so bad that on August 5th at the trial, they had him dress into the clothes he entered in. And they didn't give him a belt. He had to hold his pants up.
The entire time.
With
shackles.
Yes.
Right.
They made him go through the entire trial with shackles and holding his pants. He couldn't even go through his papers.
Yeah. Now, the reason why I say Israel is that these police are trained in Israel now.
Really?
Yeah. You see, they learn how to pacify in the same way that the Israelis are pacifying the Palestinians.
Okay.
That's the training that they're giving to be able to pacify American citizens.
We came across something similar to what you're saying. It is Operation Desert Snow, where a retired police officer charges up to hundreds of thousands of dollars per police officer, claiming that he can get a bigger bust on anybody with his techniques, and
He's training them.
He's bringing in police officers from all across the United States and training them and making these brochures and then the claims that you can get all this cash and then you can say it's drug money, and of course all of the boy's money was stolen. I gave my child all of his savings that he had since he was a baby, and they took it and said it was drug money.
Yeah. So they stole your family's money.
Yes,
they stole
all of their money.
Your family's money, which is a criminal offense.
Yes,
they took it all.
They are committing systematic crimes against your family, against both of you, against the children,
and 60,000 other Americans as well.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So now, let's see. Excuse me. There was just an app which suddenly closed down here, and my attention was taken away. So please continue.
We likened it to piracy. They're like pirates, really. And
they hunt for these young boys and
it's worse than pirates, because pirates are outlaws, but these are members of the law.
Well, they have the weapons.
It's called breach of trust.
Alfred, yes.
It's called breach of trust. See, it's worse than pirates. Pirates would be hiding along the side of the road with their weapons, but this is worse than that.
Because she let them know that these boys did respect the police. We brought them up that way.
And they lied under oath.
They did trust
in the trial. They lied under oath and said that they were disobedient.
So this is institutional corruption of the police,
absolutely,
of the courts, of the public defenders, and of the local legal community.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All of it.
And the torture that goes on inside
so that's what I wanted to ask. Now, you mentioned that a short while ago the person next to Stephen in the shower committed suicide, and that Stephen almost died. Could you go into that in more depth?
Stephen has made several phone calls. He feels like he would lose his mind if he didn't have his phone calls or somebody to talk to, because these boys that he's in jail with tell him all the same story over and over. They wait a lot of times, after they've pulled over people from out of state. They wait till the statute of limitations is about to run up, which would be 2 years, and they get pulled over on a minor traffic offense, say, speeding or failure to yield or, what have you. They get pulled over, and then all of a sudden they're in jail for X amount of years on trumped up charges from some encounter they had 2 years previous. And they routinely trump up charges and add charges. In these boys, they just take it on the chin. They say there's nothing else you can do except just roll with it because they're the ones with the weapons.
Now, is he being held in a for-profit prison or a state prison?
That's a good
state
question.
Prisons for-profit?
We believe they are for-profit, yes.
Yeah. So that the more bodies, the more individuals that the prisons have there,
yes,
they get paid by the body. So
yes, he said they're out in the halls. They sleep in the hall.
Yeah. So that is why they're packing them in, because the more people that they have, then the more contract the owners get and the more everybody gets. So this is part of the for-profit prison. It's all about profits.
Right,
Have
and
completely-
stealing cash off the
Yeah.
people traveling.
Yeah. So this has become this is corruption that is at historic levels and is as corrupt as any society in the history of the world. Of the world.
I
mean,
would
yeah.
tend to, yes, I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of, I have been in many countries, from Cuba to every country in South America, to most countries of Africa, to countries in Europe, to countries in Asia, and this ranks with one of the most corrupt countries on the face of the planet.
Absolutely.
And people should just face up to it. Americans are just going to have to face up to it and take action. And get out of
Absolutely.
denial.
Absolutely.
Get out of denial. Face up to Netanyahu. Throw the Jews out of America. The Zionists. This is what caused it.
The Zionists, correct.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
now.
I would like to go back.
Because look, we are going to have to get him out of prison, but it's going to take some outrage. It's going to take Americans standing up and doing something.
We've been every emotion. We've been
through it.
No,
I have
it's
a
going to
list
take
of abuse.
some outrage besides the mothers.
I agree.
right.
You know?
I agree.
But you know,
go ahead.
it's hard when you're faced with, you know, we're talking about a young life being absolutely ruined. And how is he going to ever get a job with 3 felonies now that were trumped up charges to begin with? We're going to have to work, you know, and get those things taken off.
And one of the things he wanted to do was be a senator. He loved America.
That was his
loved
goal.
The whole concept of the Constitution.
He wanted to be a senator.
Yeah. So this is the perfect person that the occupiers of this country, of the U.S., would want to destroy.
Absolutely.
And so he was probably targeted the moment he said, "Are you sworn to uphold the Constitution?"
That's correct.
And then
exactly.
he was targeted for destruction at that point.
Yes.
Now, so that you've now just stated that he was almost killed recently.
Well,
the boy in the shower was.
no, Stephen was almost killed in the county jail.
In the county
And
jail,
then
we have a list of abuses I would like for you to present also. One I want to point out, one of the first abuses was on March 19th, when the first week he was in there, the first month. One officer threatens to kill him and his family, Marine style.
All of us.
He
said if you don't tell your friends and your family
to stop the paperwork,
stop putting paperwork, that we were going to be killed Marine style. And then we put out a letter to the governor and the mayor of Missouri and of Florida for protection. And we got nothing.
No, they cannot help us. And in fact, they have no jurisdiction or no way of interfering with these what happens in the court system.
They said they're completely helpless. The courts and basically what it came down to is what they said. So we said these court systems have no checks and balances.
No, but that officer was uttering a threat.
Yeah,
that's a criminal offense. That has nothing to do with the courts. That's a criminal offense, and either governor could appoint a prosecutor to look into that.
And let me say one more thing, Alfred, if I may. On one hearing, we were. It was in August of last year, was it?
June 3rd, 2014.
June 2014 was a preliminary hearing. Stephen was thrown into the courtroom. He was objecting to the judge. He wanted to speak. The judge wouldn't let him speak. We were all present. Stephen's family and friends were all there. We sat there and witnessed them beat him out of that courtroom.
I mean, beat him
beat
with
the
a stick. And he said, they're hitting my head.
They beat him in the head and face and neck. They beat him so bad
Mhm.
that he couldn't.
His wrist broke.
We asked
They
to
pulled him.
see him, and they wouldn't let us see him. They didn't want us taking pictures
Well,
of him.
Yeah,
They did, and he was in shackles.
yeah.
That's
And-
another felony.
And all this time, you were seeking a lawyer, and you could not get one.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. Now,
We were going up on it.
I know that we discussed this, and I do have to ask it. And I know it may be uncomfortable, but David Wynn Miller has been involved in this case,
Yes.
and I knew that I know that I mentioned that it's published that David Wynn Miller has been involved in at least 10 published, has intervened in at least 10 published defenses between 1998 and 2010 that were all unsuccessful. So that may have aggravated things here.
Judge Miller did tell us about those when we talked with him. He told us about various other things. One thing I did want to mention before we started talking about Judge Miller was that I contacted after we witnessed the brutality of Stephen being beaten in shackles and chains and cuffs. And it was broadcast on Missouri television when we were in the hotel that an attorney there in Missouri picked up a case of a young boy being beaten by an officer who was in cuffs, and that was a felony offense. And the attorney picked up the case in 2 seconds. I called the attorney. I wrote his name down. I called him the next day. I said, I have a case for you, and it's even better than the one that you've got right now. And I told him about Stephen's case, and he said, let me be very clear. I took that case because there was video footage. If you don't have pictures for me, I'm not interested, was what I was told.
Wow.
So, but we have witnesses. We have.
It was in the courtroom, and maybe they could.
It was in the court. The judge saw it. It was at least 5, 6, 7 officers.
There are. Yeah, the judge and the other court officials and the public prosecutor, the public defender don't count because they aren't people anymore. They're just robots in the service of the fascist
were all
state.
there. I said we have.
Yeah, they aren't people anymore.
Exactly.
They forfeited their rights to be people. Okay,
Well,
so look, the issue is solutions. How are we going to get a proper attorney? I mean, I'm sorry.
That's our question.
David Wynn Miller runs beautiful seminars. I'm sure he's made breakthroughs on syntax in his world, but these are rogue institutions, and they only function according to certain rules. And your goals are to get your son out before he's killed.
Right.
And David Wynn Miller is neither a judge inside that system, nor is he an attorney inside that system. Right. So I don't know. So his presence may have aggravated here.
That seems to be what has happened.
Yeah.
The reason we swung big and hard like that was because we thought that was our last prayer. We really thought that was the last. This was the only move we had.
Okay. Look. The you need an attorney to bring a habeas corpus in federal court or something like that to really, there are grounds for that. There's a way to get Stephen out of a torture hole
It is a
in you know, what is it, St. Charles? Is that where he's being held now?
He's no longer there. He's been shifted around to several different prisons now, but the county jail there was where all of these
Right.
Torture
Right.
things were done to him.
Yeah,
The most things you wouldn't ever think of.
He needs to, at this case, he needs habeas corpus. He needs someone who's a real person to come in, and I mean, this is the Dreyfus case. You know, this is J'accuse. This shows the depths to which the corporation of America has descended, in my judgment.
You're
and this it's a credit to you, to you mothers, that Stephen is still alive, and mothers historically, that's what keeps this world sane and going. But now it's time for other people than the mothers, and for attorneys who are officers of the bar,
like
really
some men to
forward.
step up as well. And we've said that many times. We really could use some men to help us out here, because it seems like our cries are falling on deaf ears.
Or women attorneys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Now,
and I've read some cases they did an awesome job. And I had sent Stephen's case to them, but I did not hear back.
It just seems like it's more than anybody wants to bite off. In my opinion, like that one attorney that didn't want it because of it didn't have any video or pictures.
But I would think this contract with this officer,
that is a picture. That is a picture.
Right there.
That's a picture of an unlawful contract by one of the officers that is corroborating evidence of the deep irregularities in this case. Now, how can people contact you? You know, say if we began to get this around.
Oh, great.
And you can start sending this interview to bar associations and to law firms. I mean, all of these large law firms have pro bono, you know, and all of the bar associations have pro bono sections where people give of their time. They all pull in $500,000 to $1 million to $2-3 million a year.
Well, we have a contract here, so if that's enough to attract an attorney and get the boy out.
Sure. So how can people get in touch with you? By email and phone? You can send me all of those details.
Okay.
I will put them in the video. I'll put them in the article. Please send me a copy. Scan the contract. Send me a copy of all the torture items that you saw, and any other information that we can put in the article. This is, that torture ring and that money extortion ring, which is not only the police, it's the entire legal system.
Correct.
And justice system, the courts, the public defenders, the legal community, the police of that area, it has just gone beyond the pale.
And one other thing too I'd like to add was, my son told me there were 12 police cars there, and at least we couldn't get a single dash cam. Not a single dash cam. We've asked over and over. We've submitted FOIA requests.
Yes.
We've done everything in our power to get some sort of footage on camera, but they're hiding it or they've destroyed it.
Yeah.
But they will not get us any footage.
Right.
And they said if we could just get the dash cam, that's our case. wrapped
no,
up.
and your case now is going to be international. It's going to be known throughout Europe. It's going to be known
Right.
throughout Asia.
Mhm.
It'll be known in all of the tribunals. It'll be known worldwide. And you know, my advice to you is to look up all the large uh, uh, law firms in all of your cities, in
Yes.
St. Louis, and all these places. Start going to all of the lawyers. Email, doesn't cost you any money.
No, I know.
Attach this interview and the article and the data and the thing, send it to them, and just keep on going. I mean, until you find somebody who's alive.
Yes.
And who is alive. That's it.
Right.
Is there anybody alive south of the 49th parallel
You're
other
right.
than mothers? Mothers have
Right.
saved the human race forever.
We agree. Gosh.
Okay.
Well,
Now,
that's right.
now let me ask you this.
Mhm.
Is there something or other details that you, about this case, that you feel that you want to say that you have not said so far?
Well,
There's so much.
just there really is
A lot.
a lot to this. There's a lot of paperwork. The tortures that he's undergone, just because he keeps reiterating that he's innocent, is absolutely beyond anything that you would ever expect. There was one instance where they told these inmates in that county jail that there was a fire and they were all going to die. And they said that they all had to be locked up and they were going to
They locked
die.
them all up in their cell,
And
they were
they
going to die.
cried and
They called their loved ones.
and they were told to call their loved ones, that this was their last time they were probably going to speak to anybody. So we get the call from Stephen, and so we of course call 911 and we say,
There's a fire.
please go check this out. We've got a phone call, and we were threatened. We were threatened with making false allegations to 911. And I said, I am prepared to back up my statement. Please go check this out. I will assume all responsibility. I believe that there is a serious situation going on over there. And they told me to call back in 30 minutes. I called back. They told me there was no fire, and they told me not to call back or they were going to press charges. And then after that, they were literally not given any water for an entire week.
Yes.
No water. They were one of them was caught trying to drink drops out of a dripping faucet and was beat almost to death. They said all they would give them to drink was Kool-Aid. And we thought they had some sort of poison in the Kool-Aid, that they were forcing them to drink Kool-Aid and not allowing them to have water. So we started calling charities to go give them water.
To go give them
and
water.
They wouldn't accept the water. And so there was everything. We did everything that you could possibly think of doing, and they have wasted our time. They have wasted our energy. They've exhausted us. We've spent all of our resources, all of our money, everything.
And so another party that seems to be part of this are the owners of the for-profit prisons.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And so they're all skimming off of the contracts.
Right.
They're packing in all of these prisoners
you know what?
on
And
false charges.
One more thing too, Alfred. Let me not forget this. There was a time that they turned off the air conditioning, and they said the steam was so hot that Stephen and his inmate Bunky there were on the floor trying to breathe the air from under the door because it was so hot in the cell. they were sleeping on the floor trying to get oxygen because they thought they were going to suffocate in the cell.
Okay, now let me ask you these questions. Number one, have you gone to the media?
Yes.
Yes.
And what has been the reaction there?
We can't seem to, I went to the people that reported the little boy being reunited with his father that was taken to South America by the mother, and then she died, and that it was MSNBC.
Yeah.
I called and I wrote them.
Fox News.
I called and wrote Fox News.
Who else was there?
I called and wrote all of the local channels.
We went there and visited them. They said
We
no.
actually, yes, when we
They
were
said no to
there,
us.
they
It
we
wasn't
went
a
in,
story they could do.
they said they don't just do these things willy-nilly. We said that this is not a willy-nilly case.
Mhm.
We've kept meticulous records, and they thought we were being bamboozled by a young man that just wants to be taken, just wants to go home and get out of jail.
No,
And not with these. He's passed kidney stones. He's had broken bones.
His vitamin D level was a 4, when the normal vitamin D level is a 300, because they held him in a hole for 71 days with not even an hour out like you're supposed to get.
He hadn't seen. He
He
literally.
had green stuff growing on his back.
He had
that
mold.
was September of
He had mold
2013.
growing on him, and
Yes.
and one time he had been thrown into the hole with no clothes. They had maced him.
Because he did not want to become an inmate of the for-profit prison and
Right.
make
Didn't-
himself willingly more profit for the Bush gang.
Right.
And
That's
hence
just
the
about
name-
it. That's
Hence,
about
they
it.
gave him, that's right, and they gave him the nickname, the unsigned temp. That's his nickname because he wouldn't sign their contract to help them make their money. Basically it. And so they really, really abused
They
him.
really trumped up the abuse, and he said he had mold growing on his back, and
They broke his wrist, and they even x-rayed it, and they saw it broke, but they wouldn't put
a cast on it.
So he used a sock and other things he found in the cell to set the wrist.
He had to set it himself, he
Yes.
said, and he said it hurt worse than anything you could imagine. And
Yes. Well, that was when? That was September 2013.
And
I have all the dates of these things that happened. Another terrible one was December 21st, 2013. He was waterboarded, and a female police officer wiped a soil cloth on his genitals.
all over his body, and then he broke
All
out
his
in
genitals.
sores all over him. He thought he had ringworm or some
Now,
sort of
disease.
Have you gone to the federal authorities at all?
No.
Yes, I called the FBI. I did.
Oh, yeah, that's
I
right.
did.
No,
They-
like go to the U.S. attorney to file torture charges.
Yes, we went to Chris Costa, remember him?
Yes.
Yes, and we spent a lot of time on the phone, and they're the ones who directed us
He
to
was playing golf.
the ACLU.
He
They
did. He
directed us
wasn't.
there.
I literally called him on his cell phone while he was playing golf. And
Who's that?
Chris Coster.
Chris Coster of the Missouri Attorney General.
And what happened there?
And he said he didn't have any power over the courts. They
They gave us
maintain.
the ACLU number.
This
they
has
gave
nothing
the-
to do with the courts. This is torture occurring
Exactly.
in the prisons.
And that's what we've been told over and over again, Alfred, is that there's no
This
checks
is
and
torture
balances.
occurring in the prison. Have you thought about going to the United Nations and Human Rights Commission?
We did. I got somebody in New Zealand.
New Zealand, I remember that one. I remember that. Yes.
And I was given a Dear John letter, and
Sorry, we can't help
can't
you.
be of any service
Uh-huh.
to you. And
So there's no
nobody
lawyer.
believes us.
Why
There's
we
no
want-
lawyer in the world who will do it. There's like they're.
Nobody
don't get
believes. Yes, nobody. We've got the boy has literally aged before our eyes, 20
I
years,
don't get it.
and they
I don't
don't.
get why I don't get why nobody in a position of responsibility has stepped forward. I mean, even for their own, like a lawyer who would bring a habeas corpus or something.
Just for the $10 million alone, just for that one.
That's why we are, really grappling with this whole thing.
Right. Right. Oh,
We
okay.
know
Yeah. So I think that me and our audience is getting the point here. So,
Okay.
so what we're going to do is to put this out as an emergency appeal
Thank you.
to
Thank you.
to the legal
Oh gosh,
and to the help to the community. I'll put it to the service community.
yes.
Even people who are paralegals could come in
Right.
and begin to help you. People who are paralegals in law firms could come in.
Anyone.
A
Right.
woman who's a paralegal in an office could come in and begin to help you, and then could begin to speak to people in her firm and get you on their pro bono. I mean,
Yes.
start to get people talking to each other.
Yes.
See, all of this is mind control. They have Americans mind control so that they're absolutely just frozen in place like robots. They've robotized them.
slaves.
They've
We've been
robotized them.
enslaved. Yes.
And so the Israeli proconsul, who's really the absolute ruler of America, spoke to the Congress, which is the thing today, and that's who the rulers of America are de facto.
Oh, may I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Very important.
The bunkie that I told you about that was breathing the air underneath the crack in the door that I told you about earlier, he moved on to a prison. When he left the county jail, he left Stephen there, and he went on with his case and moved into a prison over trumped up charges as well. But he got me on the phone, and he told me that he had 30 names, witnesses that would be willing to testify to the torture that Stephen was undergoing.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a list of names, and every time a new person would come into that prison, they would be wiping their head going, man, you wouldn't believe what's going on with this one boy over there. They would, just shake their head. This poor kid's going to die. And I said, can you go find out if it's Stephen? And he went, and every time it was Stephen. He was in the hole for 71 days completely.
And you don't even know a newspaper editor in Kansas or Jacksonville or any other place that would have gotten this in the mainstream media.
We have literally beaten the pavements, and well, since it's grown to this all this level of documentation, this helps us. Your outlet and then us having this compiled all of this documentation. It should be enough of a case to something.
Right. So be sure and send me.
Yes.
In fact, today would be good so I can write this story to tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Send me via email as much documentation as you can so I can reproduce it in the article so that it's all there, so it's all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
That'd be great. Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to say that hasn't been?
Well, his eyes have been ruined by being maced so many times. They maced him, and then they said they wiped mace on his private area and left him with no clothes for 71 days and no way to wipe this mace out of his eyes. And he had his arms were handcuffed, no clothes, and mace in his eyes and on his private area for 71 days.
Yeah. Now, I would say that's worth at least $100 million in a punitive damages case.
That's what I would think.
So if you can't get a lawyer for that, I I don't know. Have you tried to get a lawyer for damages?
Well,
Yes.
the last one that I talked to said if I didn't have pictures, he wasn't interested. That was the
But
last one.
No, but
emailed like you
I'm
said.
talking about damages.
Oh.
All you have to
Yep.
do is look at the corpus,
Okay.
Right.
look at the body.
Okay.
Yes,
It's, I
wrist.
mean, the evidence is on the body. All you have to do is produce the body, and you've
Okay.
got the torture.
Right.
That man's being
Okay.
tortured.
Okay.
Correct.
You don't need any more evidence than his body. His body is the evidence.
Gotcha.
Now, that lawyer is going to get 40% of $100 million. How
I
much
know.
more do people need? Are you pursuing an award for this type of damages? Are you? Yes
Well,
or no?
now, Alfred, absolutely.
I actually did research some top attorneys, and I did what you said because it's cheap. I emailed them. I certainly did. I think at what, 50? I was up to 50.
No. Look, email doesn't work. You've
Okay.
got to go. You've got to make an appointment. You've got to
Okay.
walk in. It's got to be
Okay.
on one page. You've got to
All right.
have it right there. You've got to
Uh-huh.
have the pictures of. You can visit him in prison, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, go in there and take a camera, and then take it to the lawyers.
Well,
We have
we're
pictures.
not allowed to have a camera, but we did do that. That's why we have this picture.
Yeah. Do it, and then a personal injury case. I mean, this is like punitive damage to $100 million. I mean, go
Yes.
for it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for the encouragement.
I know.
Just go for it. But email, you're not going to get anything via email. The only way you're going to get it is calling up, make an appointment, walk in with your package and thing. Do you want this case?
Mm-hmm.
If not,
Okay.
why not? I mean, this is money. This is big money. His
Yeah.
body is the evidence. That's the pictures.
Yeah.
They can't torture people in prison. They'll lose all of their money with it. All you do is you walk it over to federal court, and you file it there, and you hear it in front of federal jury, and they'll give you $100 million.
All right.
Thank you.
That's not legal advice, but that's my advice to you.
Thank you, Alfred.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You're a champion around this. Thank you.
I can't tell you how much we appreciate the encouragement because
Mhm.
we're certainly not going to give up hope, but it does feel like that.
No, that's it, because they have, this is over the top.
It is.
This is over the top,
Mhm.
and find yourself a lawyer that'll sue them for the damages for torture, that'll take your evidence, including the pictures, and walk them over to federal court and sue them for $100 million. You'll get some attention.
Yeah.
There we go. I think
Yes.
we have our marching orders.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
Well, that's it. I want to thank you. I really want to thank you
totally.
for taking our
It has
story.
been an absolute
Nice.
pleasure
Okay, well,
meeting
look,
you.
I really respect you both. Mothers save everybody. I know that when I was being targeted, I mean, it's no accident that I'm physically in exile in Canada, and I've been so for many years, 15 years now, because if I weren't, I would not be alive. And it was my mother, God rest her soul, who kept me alive during the years from 1973 to when I left for Canada. It was my mother who kept me alive. So I know both. I know what both of you have done for your sons, and I commend what mothers do for their children. That's what I've got to say. God bless them.
Oh, thank you.
God bless you.
God bless you too, Alfred.
You too, Alfred.
Okay.
Thank you so
Anything
much.
else?
No, that's all.
That's
Okay. Well, we all want to thank you for everything that you've done for your children, for Stephen Temple, and we will get to the bottom of this.
Yes.
Please, just take all of this and move it forward. Hit them where it hurts. They only think about money. Sue them for $100 million in federal court for torture. Forget it. They can't torture. It's illegal.
I know.
It's illegal to do it.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like anybody was paying attention.
Yeah,
And
they 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 overstepped there.
Way.
They overstepped there. Bring it in federal court and ask for $100 million.
Got it.
Okay.
Sounds good.
thank you, Alfred.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
Good night.
Night.